10 myths that were mocked, but turned out to be true. Number 10. The Kraken was actually the ocean's favorite joke. Picture a Nordic fisherman happily downing a frothy mug of beer, swearing to his drinking buddies that he'd just seen a sea monster with tentacles as thick as ship masts. According to him, the creature was powerful enough to wrap itself around an entire fleet and drag every ship into the abyss. Congratulations, he had just become the tavern's free stand-up comedian. For centuries, the legend of the Kraken, a colossal beast said to rule the seas, was dismissed by scholars as nothing more than a sailor's tale invented to frighten inexperienced seamen. After all, how could the ocean possibly support a squid the size of a building? Learned scientists confidently argued that the so-called Kraken was nothing more than drifting islands or giant patches of seaweed mistaken for monsters by exhausted sailors. But the ocean had a surprise waiting. One day, fishermen off the coast of Newfoundland were suddenly attacked by an enormous tentacle. They hacked it off with an axe and brought the severed limb, measuring an incredible 19 feet, nearly 6 meters, long, to a local naturalist. Suddenly, people began to sweat. The Kraken stories weren't the product of terrified imaginations. They were inspired by Archaeoteuthis ducks, the giant squid. Modern science has revealed that these extraordinary creatures can reach lengths of up to 43 feet, about 13 meters. Their eyes are as large as basketballs, allowing them to hunt in the pitch-black depths of the ocean. Their suckers are lined with razor-sharp serrated rings capable of carving enormous scars into the skin of sperm whales, their greatest rivals. Epic battles between monsters nearly 10,000 meters beneath the sea are completely real. The only difference is that these creatures simply don't bother swimming up to introduce themselves to us. Number 9. Gorillas were once considered mythical creatures. The very idea of gorillas completely baffled people in the ancient world. There was a time when these animals seemed just as mythical as unicorns or fire-breathing dragons. African tribes repeatedly told European explorers about enormous, hairy creatures that possessed the strength of apes yet walked like humans deep within the jungle. In return, they were met with mocking smiles and accusations of superstition. The Greek explorer Hanno even wrote about encountering fierce creatures his guides called gorillae. He reportedly brought several of their skins back to display in a temple at Carthage. Later European scholars simply assumed he had mistaken a few angry chimpanzees for terrifying monsters after becoming exhausted during his journey. Everything began to change when Dr. Thomas Savage obtained several unusual skulls from missionaries in Liberia. They were massive, with jaws powerful enough to crack coconuts and bone structures that looked strangely human, yet they clearly belonged to neither humans nor any known ape. Later, explorer Paul du Chaillu ventured deep into the rainforest and finally saw these creatures with his own eyes. The local people must have been thinking, "We've been telling you this all along." Yet when du Chaillu returned to Europe with his discoveries, he was ridiculed as a liar. Even after the existence of western lowland gorillas had been accepted, scientists stubbornly insisted that mountain gorillas were still nothing more than fiction. They remained creatures of legend until German Army Captain Robert von Beringe accidentally shot one, providing undeniable proof that they were real. Number 8. The Hittite Empire mentioned in the Bible was real. For centuries, the Hittites were one of history's greatest mysteries. The Bible mentions them dozens of times, describing a vast empire with military power strong enough to stand toe-to-toe with ancient Egypt itself. Historians, however, usually responded with skeptical smiles. Egypt had towering pyramids that everyone could see, while the Hittites hadn't left behind a single visible city or monument. To many scholars, believing in the Hittite Empire sounded about as credible as believing in a flying magic carpet. That skepticism came crashing down when German archaeologist Hugo Winkler excavated a remote village in modern-day Turkey and uncovered an astonishing treasure. It wasn't gold. It was over 10,000 clay tablets. These weren't shopping lists or random notes, they were the official archives of the Hittite Empire, carefully inscribed in clay. The discovery proved that the site was none other than Hattusa, the long-lost Hittite capital. Once linguists deciphered the language, ancient history had to be rewritten. Royal financial records, military documents, diplomatic correspondence, and administrative reports emerged from the tablets. They revealed an empire that mastered ironworking and fielded some of the fastest war chariots of the ancient world. The archives showed that the Hittites were essentially the third great superpower of the ancient Near East, standing alongside Egypt and Babylon. One tablet even recorded the famous Treaty of Kadesh, widely regarded as the earliest known peace treaty in human history. It was signed between the Hittites and the great pharaoh Ramesses II after an enormous chariot battle, serving as an ancient equivalent of ending a Cold War. Just like that, the Hittites stepped out of the pages of scripture and into the pages of world history. Number 7. Rogue waves that swallow ships. For generations, sailors suffered one of history's greatest injustices. Imagine surviving a nearly vertical wall of water taller than a 10-story building that suddenly appeared out of nowhere on an otherwise calm sea. Then imagine trying to tell people what happened, only to be met with sympathetic smiles and accusations that you had imagined the whole thing. Stories of monstrous waves capable of snapping cargo ships in half were dismissed as exaggerated sea tales. Oceanographers armed with sophisticated mathematical models insisted such waves were mathematically impossible. According to their calculations, a 30-meter wave should occur only once every 10,000 years. Any larger reports were blamed on frightened sailors exaggerating what they had seen. Everything changed at Norway's Dropner oil platform. A laser measuring system recorded something unbelievable: a single wave standing 84 feet, about 25.6 meters, high suddenly rose from surrounding waves that were only about 20 feet tall. Unlike eyewitnesses, scientific instruments don't exaggerate. The discovery shocked the scientific community and prompted the European Space Agency to launch Project MaxWave, using satellites to scan the world's oceans. In just 3 weeks, they detected at least 10 rogue waves exceeding 25 meters in height. Had the Dropner wave struck an ordinary ship instead of a heavily reinforced oil platform, it would have become yet another mysterious shipwreck with no explanation. Today, scientists openly acknowledge that these oceanic assassins are very real, and they can appear almost anywhere. Number 6. Ball lightning was once considered supernatural. Imagine sitting peacefully inside a medieval English church during a storm. Without warning, a glowing sphere of light the size of a watermelon drifts through a stone window, hissing and crackling as it floats across the room. Anyone who claimed to witness such a thing was almost guaranteed to be labeled insane, or worse, accused of dealing with dark forces. Reports of these mysterious glowing orbs appeared again and again throughout history. Witnesses described luminous spheres that hovered in midair, moved against the wind, changed direction without warning, and even seemed to pass through solid objects. Scientists, committed to strict logical explanations, dismissed the reports as optical illusions caused by staring at bright flashes of lightning. Then came one of the most terrifying incidents ever recorded. At the church in Widecombe, Devon, a gigantic ball of fire burst into the building during a service. It shattered windows, damaged thick stone walls, killed 4 people, and left behind a powerful smell of sulfur. To the terrified congregation, it seemed like divine punishment itself. Centuries later, Chinese researchers studying ordinary lightning accidentally captured a genuine ball lightning event using modern spectroscopic instruments. What had long been dismissed as madness was finally vindicated. Scientists now believe ball lightning is an extremely rare plasma phenomenon that can form when lightning strikes silica-rich soil, creating clouds of glowing nanoparticles that slowly burn while suspended in the air. Ordinary lightning flashes and disappears in an instant, but ball lightning performs an eerie glowing dance that can last for several seconds. Number 5. The sunken city of Helike was the real-life Atlantis. The story of Atlantis, a magnificent civilization swallowed by the sea after angering the gods, is one of humanity's most famous legends. Most philosophers agreed it was nothing more than one of Plato's elaborate allegories. What few people realized, however, was that Plato may have drawn inspiration from a real catastrophe. The city of Helike was the cultural and economic capital of the Achaean League, a thriving metropolis whose people worshipped Poseidon, the god of the sea. Ancient records tell of a strange warning. Just days before disaster struck, every rat, snake, centipede, and insect fled the city for the nearby hills. The people ignored the signs, laughing at the animals' panic. Then, on a winter night, the earth shook violently. Moments later, a massive tsunami swept over the city. By sunrise, Helike and tens of thousands of its inhabitants had vanished. Later Roman writers described sailing over the area and seeing the faint outlines of bronze statues beneath the water. As centuries passed, Helike's exact location faded into legend. Historians eventually began to wonder whether it had become just another mythical city like Atlantis. The answer finally came through archaeology. A team of researchers eventually pinpointed Helike's true location. The reason it had remained hidden for so long was unexpected. Tectonic activity had gradually lifted the land over time. The city wasn't resting beneath the deep sea at all, it had been buried beneath a shallow lagoon after an earthquake liquefied the surrounding ground. Archaeologists uncovered city walls, coins bearing the image of Poseidon, and pottery trapped deep within layers of mud. Helike stands today as a chilling reminder of nature's devastating power over even the greatest human civilizations. Number 4. Norse legends turned out to be historical records. For centuries, Norse legends were dismissed as wildly exaggerated tales invented by boastful Vikings. The Vinland sagas told the story of Leif Erikson and other Viking explorers crossing the Atlantic Ocean. According to the stories, they discovered a fertile land rich in timber and wild grapes before establishing settlements in North America. Most scholars dismissed the entire account as pure fantasy. After all, everyone knew that Christopher Columbus had been the first European to reach the Americas. That belief collapsed when Norwegian explorers Helga Ingstad and Øystein Ingstad made one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. At Newfoundland, Canada, they uncovered an entire Viking settlement consisting of 8 buildings that matched the ancient sagas in astonishing detail. The site, now known as L'Anse-aux Meadows, revealed a thriving community. Archaeologists discovered houses, workshops, iron-smelting furnaces, and iron rivets used in Viking ships. They also found bronze cloak pins, bone needles, and, perhaps most importantly, a stone spindle whorl used for spinning thread. That simple tool proved women had been part of the expedition, confirming that this was a genuine settlement rather than merely a temporary raiding camp. The discovery of butternuts provided even stronger evidence. These trees don't grow anywhere near Newfoundland because the climate is far too cold. That meant the Vikings had traveled much farther south, into what is now the United States, reaching North America nearly 500 years before Columbus. Number 3. Meteorites were once considered a farmer's superstition. The idea that rocks could fall from the sky was once treated as complete nonsense. Anyone claiming to have witnessed such an event was branded ignorant, delusional, or mentally unstable. During the Age of Enlightenment, many of Europe's greatest minds insisted that the heavens above the clouds were completely empty. The famous chemist Antoine Lavoisier confidently declared that stones simply could not fall from the sky because there were no stones in the sky to begin with. Challenging that conclusion was considered irrational. Whenever villagers presented smoking rocks as evidence, scholars invented increasingly creative explanations. Perhaps lightning had melted ordinary rocks on the ground. Perhaps a whirlwind had lifted them into the air before dropping them back down. Every theory served the same purpose, protecting academic pride rather than admitting ignorance. Everything changed in the French town of L'Aigle. In broad daylight, thousands of blazing stones rained from a clear blue sky. Entire communities witnessed the extraordinary event. The French government immediately dispatched physicist Jean-Baptiste Biot to investigate. His investigation uncovered overwhelming evidence. The scorched stones possessed chemical compositions unlike anything found in Earth's crust. Those blackened rocks gave birth to the modern science of meteorites. History had delivered a humbling lesson to the intellectuals who had mocked ordinary people for accidentally making astronomical observations. Number 2, the Amazon warriors were not a fairy tale. In the ancient world, women were often portrayed as staying at home, weaving and caring for their families. So stories about Amazons, women who rode horses, mastered archery, and fought as fiercely as men, were dismissed as Greek fantasy. Most historians believe they existed only to make male heroes appear even more impressive. That assumption began to crumble when archaeologists excavated ancient burial mounds around the Black Sea. Instead of finding ordinary graves, they uncovered hundreds of women buried alongside powerful weapons. These weren't isolated cases. They belonged to the nomadic Scythian and Sarmatian tribes. Their skeletons carried the scars of a lifetime spent in battle. The bones in their legs had become curved from riding horses since childhood, while their shoulder bones had developed unusually strong muscle attachments from repeatedly drawing powerful bows. One female warrior was discovered with an arrowhead still lodged deep inside her knee, proving she had survived, and continued fighting, after a devastating injury. Another displayed severe fractures to her skull caused by blunt force weapons. Archaeological evidence shows that in some regions, nearly 40% of warrior graves belonged to women. This was a society where girls were trained to fight alongside boys from an early age. These discoveries forced historians to rethink how ancient Greek artists portrayed women. Instead of elegant ladies wearing flowing dresses, Amazons gradually began appearing in practical patterned trousers, clothing far better suited for horseback combat. Ironically, these legendary women may have helped introduce the concept of trousers to Western civilization. Number 1, the great city of Troy really existed. For centuries, Troy was believed to belong entirely to mythology, a magical city that existed only within Homer's epic poems and nowhere on Earth. Then came a man named Heinrich Schliemann. A wealthy German businessman with an almost obsessive passion for ancient history, Schliemann ignored the ridicule surrounding him. People thought he was crazy when he arrived in modern-day Turkey carrying a worn copy of Homer's Iliad and a shovel. He chose to dig into a seemingly ordinary hill simply because its landscape resembled Homer's poetic descriptions. What he uncovered changed history forever. Instead of one city, Schliemann unearthed 9 separate layers of Troy, each built directly on top of the previous one. Every time the city was destroyed by war, invasion, or earthquakes, its inhabitants leveled the ruins and constructed an even greater city above them. Massive defensive walls measuring 16 feet thick and 30 feet high revealed the enormous military importance of the site. Weapons, pottery, jewelry, and thick layers of ash from a devastating fire all matched the estimated time period of the legendary Trojan War. Unfortunately, Schliemann's archaeological methods were disastrous. In his excitement, he used explosives to blast through upper layers of the site, destroying countless priceless artifacts. He also discovered an extraordinary collection of gold jewelry, declared it to be Priam's treasure, and secretly smuggled it out of Turkey. Even so, Troy's strategic position controlling access to the Black Sea confirmed that it had been an immensely wealthy commercial hub. The famous war may have had far more to do with economics and trade than with the beauty of a single woman. And that's all for today. Which of these incredible discoveries surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more fascinating facts that prove reality is often stranger than myth. I'm Emotional Stopover, and I'm here to help you become a better version of yourself, one day at a time.